When a man walks away, he often does so believing that you will react in a predictable manner. He expects sadness, emotional messages, desperate attempts to reach out, and maybe even anger. What he does not expect, however, is complete silence and distance. The power of silence is one of the most underestimated tools when it comes to making a man regret leaving, because in that silence, a psychological shift takes place, not just for him, but for you as well. At first, he may feel relieved, thinking that he has finally gained his freedom, that he no longer has to deal with emotional conflicts, expectations, or responsibilities. Men tend to rationalize their decisions, convincing themselves that leaving was the right choice. But what happens when instead of proving his expectations right by reacting emotionally, you do the exact opposite? You go completely silent. No calls, no messages, no indirect posts on social media aimed at grabbing his attention, just distance. Pure and intentional. At first, he might not notice. His life continues as usual. He goes out, meets people, distracts himself, and feels in control. But as days turn into weeks, something starts to shift. The absence of your presence begins to feel strange. Where is the message he thought you would send? Where is the emotional reaction he expected? Instead of feeling a sense of power over the situation, he starts feeling something else. Curiosity. And curiosity is dangerous for a man who thought he had moved on easily. See, the human mind is wired to seek what it no longer has access to. The moment something becomes scarce, its value increases. And in relationships, this principle applies more than ever. When you were available, when he had constant access to you, he took it for granted. But the minute you remove yourself completely from his world, he starts questioning his decision. He starts thinking, wait, did she ever care as much as I thought? That thought alone plants the seed of doubt in his mind. And that doubt starts growing every single day that you remain silent. Silence forces a man to sit with his thoughts. Without distractions, he starts remembering things he didn't pay much attention to before. The way you used to support him, the comfort of knowing you were there, the security of your presence. Things he once brushed off now become magnified. And instead of feeling powerful for leaving, he begins to wonder if he made the biggest mistake of his life. But this is where most people fail. They break the silence too soon. They get anxious, wondering if he has forgotten them, and they reach out, hoping to get some form of reassurance. This is the worst thing you can do. The power of silence only works if you stay consistent. The minute you break it, you hand all the control back to him. He gets to feel relieved that you were still emotionally attached, that he still has you as an option, and his regret disappears. The longer you maintain your distance, the more intense his thoughts become. He may try to distract himself with other people, new experiences, or even dating someone new. But deep down, the silence you have created keeps echoing in his mind, and it will get to a point where he cannot resist checking on you. That's when you know you have won, not because you were playing games, but because you showed him something he never expected. A woman who does not chase, who does not beg, who does not react emotionally is a woman that stands out. In a world where people are constantly seeking validation, attention, and closure, you become the exception. And that alone makes you unforgettable. When a man leaves, he expects to have the upper hand. He assumes that you'll struggle with his absence, that you'll be checking your phone constantly, wondering if he'll come back. He assumes you'll post indirect messages, try to make him jealous, or even reach out to him in moments of weakness. But when you don't do any of that, when you pull back and focus entirely on yourself, you shift the dynamic in a way that he never expected. See, men are wired to seek validation through external control. When a man feels like he is in control of a situation, he feels secure. If he believes you're still thinking about him, even from a distance, he feels reassured that he could have you back anytime he wants. That's why so many men leave a relationship and assume they'll always have access to you emotionally. But when you take your focus off him completely, you introduce something he isn't used to. Uncertainty. And uncertainty is the most powerful force when it comes to making someone rethink their choices. When a man starts to realize that your attention is no longer centered on him, his natural reaction is to start wondering why. What changed? What's different? Did she meet someone else? Is she moving on? These questions become intrusive. They become thoughts that he can't shake off. At first, he might try to ignore them, assuming that you're just playing a game, but as time goes on and you remain distant, his mind starts creating scenarios. And the worst part for him, he has no answers. Men often don't realize what they had until they see it thriving without them. If you continue living your life, improving yourself, and not showing any sign of regret over the breakup, he starts seeing you in a different light. Suddenly, he starts remembering the best parts of you, the parts he once took for granted. The way you made him feel, the energy you brought into his life, the support, the comfort. All of it comes rushing back. And since he has no access to you anymore, that longing turns into regret. But the regret doesn't happen instantly. It's a slow burn. It builds over time as he watches you grow, as he sees that your life did not fall apart without him. And that's what truly gets to him. Because deep down, he expected you to miss him more than he would miss you. He expected to be the one who had control over when and how things would end. But by focusing on yourself instead of chasing him, you shatter that illusion. This is where many women make the mistake of wanting him to see their progress. They want him to notice their growth, to acknowledge their change. But the truth is, you don't need to prove anything to him. The best revenge is living well, not by showing off, not by trying to make him jealous, but by genuinely becoming the best version of yourself for your own sake. And when he finally realizes that he no longer holds the same importance in your life, that's when the real regret sets in. Not because you forced it, not because you manipulated him into missing you, but because you gave him space to see the truth. The truth that you were the one who added value to his life, not the other way around. And now he has to live with the consequences of his choice. When a man leaves, he often does so with a sense of certainty. He thinks he's making the right decision, that his life will improve, or that he won't miss what he had. Maybe he even believes that leaving will make you chase him, that you'll be the one struggling while he moves on with ease. But what happens when that's not the case? What happens when you don't react the way he expected? When you don't fall apart and instead you start thriving in his absence? That's when the regret starts creeping in, and it happens in ways he never saw coming. At first, he might feel relief. This is common because men often convince themselves that ending things was the right call. Maybe he wanted more freedom, fewer responsibilities, or simply a break from emotional connection. In those first few days or weeks, he might even feel a sense of power, thinking that you're the one left hurting while he enjoys his newfound independence. But that feeling doesn't last, because the moment he realizes that you aren't chasing him, that you aren't seeking closure or validation from him, something inside him shifts. Men are driven by a desire for control, especially in relationships. When they leave, they assume they still hold some level of power over your emotions. They think that even if you're hurting, you're still thinking about them, still hoping for them to return. And as long as they believe that, they feel secure. But when they start to see that you've completely detached, that you're no longer affected by their absence, they're hit with a different reality, one they weren't prepared for. The first sign of this shift happens subtly. He starts checking your social media, even if he doesn't engage. He wonders what you're doing, where you've been, and who you might be with. He looks for signs that you're struggling without him, that you're missing him just as much as he expected you to. But when he finds none, when he sees that your life is moving forward effortlessly, that's when the questions start filling his mind. He starts wondering if he made a mistake. He replays moments in his head, thinking about all the times you were there for him, all the ways you supported him, all the love you poured into him. And for the first time, he realizes something crucial. He took you for granted. See, in relationships, men often get comfortable. They assume that the love you give them will always be there, that your effort, your patience, your devotion will never run out. They assume that no matter what, they can always come back and things will be the same. But when you remove yourself from the equation completely, you destroy that illusion. And that's when regret starts digging deeper. He starts noticing the emptiness in his own life, the void that your absence created. Maybe he thought leaving would bring him peace, that he would enjoy the single life, that he would have more time to focus on himself. But instead, he realizes that what he truly lost wasn't just a relationship. It was a connection, an energy, a presence that made his life better. It's in the little moments that the regret hits hardest. The times when he instinctively wants to share something with you, but remembers he no longer has that option. The nights when he scrolls through his phone, feeling the urge to reach out, but stopping himself because he knows things aren't the same anymore. The times when he sees something that reminds him of you, and instead of feeling relief, he feels an ache. A deep, lingering regret that he let go of something real. But here's the key. His regret grows strongest when he sees that you're truly happy without him. When he realizes that your life didn't fall apart, that you didn't wait around hoping for his return, that you didn't let his absence break you. And that's why your silence, your detachment, your decision to move forward with confidence is the most powerful response you can give. See, many people make the mistake of thinking that the best way to make someone regret leaving is by proving something to them, by showing off, by making them jealous, by trying to get a reaction. But true power comes from indifference. When you genuinely stop caring, when you focus on yourself instead of seeking validation, that's when they feel the weight of their choices the most. Because deep down, every man wants to feel irreplaceable. He wants to believe that no matter where life takes you, no one else will compare to him. But when he sees you glowing, evolving, and living your best life, he's forced to confront the harsh truth. He was never the reason for your happiness. And that's what eats at him. So he starts looking for ways to reconnect, to test the waters, to see if he still has a place in your life. Maybe he reaches out casually. Maybe he likes an old photo. Maybe he finds an excuse to talk to you. But the difference now is that you don't react the way you used to. You're no longer emotionally invested in his validation. And that realization crushes him. Because now he sees what he lost. He sees the version of you that he once had access to but can never get back. And that's when the regret becomes unbearable. When a man leaves, he often convinces himself that he's making the right decision. He may think he's moving on to something better, that he's gaining freedom, or that you'll always be there waiting should he ever change his mind. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you don't chase, don't beg, and don't even acknowledge his absence? That's when the regret begins to settle in, creeping into his thoughts in ways he never expected. At first, he may feel relief. It's common for men to believe that walking away will bring them peace, that life without emotional obligations will be easier. Maybe he thinks he'll have more time to focus on himself, his career, or even new experiences. But in those quiet moments, when the excitement of newfound freedom wears off, he starts to realize that something is missing. The connection, the support, the presence that once felt constant, suddenly it's gone. And that's when his mind starts wandering back to what he left behind. The regret doesn't hit all at once. It builds up in layers. At first, it's just a passing thought, a memory of the way you laughed, the way you cared, the way you made him feel. He brushes it off, assuming it's just nostalgia. But as time goes on, those thoughts become more persistent. He starts to notice the little things, like how his life feels a little emptier without your energy, how conversations don't hold the same depth, how no one else quite understands him the way you did. Men often don't process their emotions in real time. They push them aside, distract themselves, and convince themselves that they're unaffected. But the mind has a way of bringing unresolved emotions to the surface, especially when reality starts to contradict the expectations they had. If he believed that you'd be broken without him, that you'd come running back, that you'd try to win him over, then seeing the opposite unfold is a wake-up call he wasn't ready for. He starts checking your social media, looking for signs of struggle, expecting to see you posting sad quotes, reminiscing about the past, or leaving hints that you miss him. But instead, he sees the opposite. He sees you thriving. You're out, enjoying life, focused on yourself, glowing in a way he never expected. And that realization stings, because in that moment, he's forced to accept that his absence didn't break you. In fact, it might have made you even stronger. Regret is most powerful when it's accompanied by the realization that something truly valuable has been lost. And that's exactly what happens when a man sees you moving forward without him. He starts remembering the little things he took for granted, the way you supported him when he doubted himself, the way you listened when no one else did, the way you made even the smallest moments feel significant. He realizes that the depth of connection you shared isn't something he can easily replace. This is when he starts second guessing his decision. He wonders if he acted too quickly, if he let go of something rare, if he made a mistake that can't be undone. And the worst part, he sees that you've changed. You're no longer the same person who would have dropped everything for him. You've grown, evolved, and found happiness on your own. And that's what makes the regret hit the hardest. Because men often assume they have unlimited chances. They believe that if they ever change their mind, they can just come back and things will be the same. But when they realize that you've truly moved on, that you've built a life where they're no longer needed, that's when the regret turns into something deeper. It's not just about missing you, it's about understanding that they lost something they can't get back. At this point, he may start reaching out, testing the waters, looking for signs that he still has a place in your life. Maybe he sends a casual message, maybe he likes an old photo, maybe he brings up an inside joke. But here's where the real shift happens. Your response isn't the same. You're no longer waiting for his attention, no longer craving his validation. And that's when he realizes that the power dynamic has completely changed. See, men don't regret losing someone who begs for them back. They regret losing the one who moves on and never looks back, the one who takes their absence as an opportunity for self-growth, who becomes even more confident, more independent, more fulfilled. Because that's when they realize they weren't the source of your happiness. And that's what truly haunts them. At first, he may try to brush it off, convince himself that he's fine, that he still made the right choice. But the more he sees you thriving, the harder it becomes to ignore the emptiness he feels. He starts comparing every new experience to what he had with you, and nothing quite measures up. Because once a man has experienced a deep, meaningful connection, anything less feels shallow. And that's when he truly starts to regret it. Not just missing you in a nostalgic way, but feeling a deep, gut-wrenching realization that he let go of something irreplaceable. And the hardest part? Knowing that it's too late, that you've already moved on, that you're no longer waiting, that he's just a memory in a chapter you've closed. That's when he finally understands what he lost. And by then, you're already too far ahead for him to ever catch up.